What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan Garcia from Fireside Knicks. I'm here with Dylan. The Knicks are coming off of an absolutely phenomenal win against the Boston Celtics. They didn't just beat the Boston Celtics, they blew them out. For most of that game, they were in control. There were some stretches where the Celtics went back on a run, but you were anticipating that the Celtics weren't going to, get blown up by like 30 or anything like that. So that kind of felt inevitable. But the Knicks were in control, man. They went in there. I know that the Celtics didn't have Jaylen Brown, but I feel like that the difference with Jaylen Brown there and not there isn't enough to make up for 15 points. I think any player, I think equating any player who isn't like the clear-cut MVP to a 15-point swing feels crazy to me. So I think the Knicks would have won that game regardless, but they looked really, really, really good. They've looked really good lately. They've beaten some pretty good teams. This is the second time they've beaten Boston in the last month, right? I mean, they've taken it to them, and Boston's a team where you look at them and that's a team that should be either in the Eastern Conference Finals or in the finals or winning it all. I'm really impressed with how they've played. Josh Hart continues to make a positive impact. We continue to get great performances from Randall and Brunson. Quickly continues to be a great glue guy for this team. Dylan, first off, how are you doing today, my friend? I imagine you're doing well. Knicks Nets tonight for the 5th seed right now, at least. The winner of that game will remain the 5th seed, I think, after tonight. So it's a really exciting game. It's a really exciting time to be a Knicks fan. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. The Knicks are rolling right now. We've won 6 in a row. Just beat the Celtics. I mean, that's a really good feeling right there. I'm really looking forward to what they can do tonight against Brooklyn. The Celtics win was very, very encouraging. They held Jason Tatum to just 14 points and ended up getting him ejected at the end of the game. Thank you, Josh Hart, for that. But they did really well, and I was really encouraged by what I saw. Emmanuel quickly had 23 points off the bench. I thought that was great. He's boosting his six-man case. Right now it seems like that's Malcolm Brogdon's award to win or lose, excuse me. But Emmanuel quickly is definitely in the consideration for that. And I definitely think, I think that the win against Boston opened up some eyes amongst both fans and the media members alike of just how good the Knicks actually are and what they could be capable of come playoff time. And I also think this win was a good eye test to see like just how competitive the Knicks could be in a playoff scenario. And this is what you said earlier. This is the second time they've beat Boston in about a month, and they've already beat Philly twice this year. They've already beat Cleveland twice this year. I really like what we have going on right now. And give credit to where it's due to the players. The addition of Josh Hart, he's been, a seamless fit. Everything's been flowing nicely with him. Jalen Brunson, he's gotten a bit of a slow start out of the break, but he's still providing an impact regardless. He's still moving the ball well. We're still finding good looks. Julius Randle has been unbelievable. He's just continuing to do his thing, which is a very great sign. And I'm hoping he can continue to do that come playoff time because, in 2021, Randall was pretty much a no-show in the playoffs. So we can only hope that this time around, when we come to the playoffs, that he will show up and that we can compete. But I definitely like our chances coming in, and I think this past win against Boston was extremely encouraging to that.
Yeah, I agree. And as you mentioned, the Knicks have kind of done it without Jalen Brunson really going off. And I know that he's taking kind of a backseat to Julius Randle, not in a sense of like Julius Randle's been like forcing him to take a backseat, but I feel like these two co-stars have kind of done a really good job at, when the other one's red hot, not stepping on their feet or not trying to force shots. They know that that person's red hot and they're willing to kind of give up the number one scoring title to them or option to them. I feel like every month, every 3 weeks or so, they're kind of flip flopping on, oh, Julius Randle's this team's best scorer. Oh no, it's Jalen Brunson. And I think it's in a good way. It's in a good way that produces winning basketball. As you mentioned, the postseason, when Randall slumped, this team was doomed. When the second he wasn't, immaculate, perfect, the all-star version of Julius Randle, this team was doomed. They were not going to get past the Hawks. It was going to be a bloodbath. And that's what happened, right? But this time around, it feels like if Julius Randle's shot isn't falling, he can just defer to Jalen Brunson. He can play a little bit more of a playmaker role, drive to the basket, get boards, not necessarily taking as many threes as he does typically. He can kind of cut down the scoring volume if he knows his shot's not falling and Jalen Brunson's shot is falling. And both of them are aggressive enough to identify when they're performing really well, they're shooting really well, and taking those shots, right? I feel like having guys who aren't scared to score, aren't scared to have the ball in their hands, but also are smart enough to understand when's the time to pass it out to your co-star. I think that's show it on the court. I think it's helped this team. They have a lot of trust in each other, and then the other guys around. Emmanuel quickly continues to just, as you mentioned, be impressive. This dude is ridiculous. He dropped 23 on the Celtics, 4 of 7 from three, 7 of 13 from the field, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. He's the most efficient version of himself he's ever been. Right, this is the most efficient version of Emmanuel quickly we've ever seen in terms of true shooting percentage, in terms of field goal percentage. This is the best version of Emmanuel quickly I think we've seen in his career. He continues to play great defense. The Knicks, they really put Tatum in hell, on Monday. They did, right? Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, they did an excellent job putting him in hell, man. They, as you mentioned, he got ejected, Josh Hart, with the wave. I mean, I think Josh Hart, it's been 6 games, but as a Knicks fan, it's hard to say that, that you're not in love with Josh Hart at this point. This dude's everything that I want in a guy that I have in a glue role, in a closing lineup, a supplemental piece. He's shot a lot better with the Knicks from 3. Is that going to sustain that 60% from 3? It's not going to sustain, but if you can give me 35 to 36% from 3 with the defense, with the playmaking, with the rebounding, it's this, as you mentioned in the previous 2 podcasts we've done, with second chance points. This team's identity needs to be around, just being able to get those second chance points. This team isn't necessarily they don't necessarily have the high powered offense a team like the Nuggets may have, or a team like the Suns can have with KD, or even the East, a team like a healthy Bucks or a healthy Celtics team, right? But what they can do? They are very physical. They know how to get boards, especially with Josh Hart. And I think that's part of their identity. It's why they're able to punch up and outplay competition that you would perceive is better than them. And we'll get to see tonight how that carries, because this team's red hot right now, and it's at the right time, right? 2 more. We talked about previewing this week, Celtics, that if, that's the game you feel like you drop, they picked up that game. Miami has lost a couple games recently, so you've widened the gap between you and Miami. You kind of feel like you grab one of these 2, and you feel really good about this week. If you somehow sweep these next 2 games, this week's a monumental success. And we talked about different conversation, asking different questions with the Knicks. Do you feel like the Knicks now, do you feel like we can start asking, can this team be a serious contender in the East? Can this team really, push the envelope with how far they can go? Like, where do you think this team's ceiling is right now after that win?
Right, right. And like I mentioned before, I really like where this team is going, and I think, this is a sign that like the Knicks may be something more than frankly everybody pretty much had thought throughout most of the season. Like this is opening a lot of eyes. We're seeing like, how fluid the units are running together, how cohesive everything has been since Josh Hart came, and how just, the team's depth overall, which I think is huge. And given all that stuff, I really like how we match up against teams like Philly and Cleveland, and we have handled Boston. Boston's obviously a really good team, so I'm not going to sit here and act like the Knicks are going to definitely beat them in the playoff series should they meet. But, I like how we match up, and I really am encouraged by what I've been seeing over the past couple weeks with this Knicks team, and I'm really encouraged by this stretch. I'm really encouraged by everything we've seen. And I think it's like you said, it's coming at a great time. The season's winding down. Mitch came back, for the final stretch of the season. We're fighting for a playoff spot. At this point, we're looking really good for a playoff spot, and we could even grab the 5th seed. Cleveland fans I've seen are starting to get worried about us too, because they see how well we're playing. And, Cleveland's a team right above us. We're only about roughly 2 games or so behind them. We're not even far from the 4th seed. Now Cleveland is a good team, but we have beaten Cleveland twice in the regular season. I know in the playoffs it's a different atmosphere, but I still like our matchup with them, and I think too this changes a bit of conversation about where the Knicks can go, because, at first everyone's like, oh, play and exit, or, they won't get past first round. At this point, we need to start talking about like, if that they can get past first round. Obviously, if they're going to be the 5th seed or the 6th seed, they're going to have a good opponent in the first round. But with the way they've been playing, I like the chances they have to be able to get past first round, make the second round, and if they really get high, even make the conference finals. Conference finals obviously seems like a bit of a long shot right now, but you know I'm not going to rule it out. I definitely wouldn't rule it out at this point. I definitely think, with all the pieces clicking together right now, if that continues to be the case throughout the rest of the season and transfers into the postseason, then we can really have something going. And, I think that's huge for the future too, because even if let's say we lose in the second round of the playoffs, let's say we win the first round, but we get knocked out in the second round, right? I think though that's still a huge step going forward, because that already defies all expectations right then and there that you made it that far. And, I think in the offseason, you made yourself look more attractable by bringing Jalen Brunson on. During the season, you made yourself more attractable because of Julius Randle's better play and how good Jalen Brunson has been playing all season long. And I think if you can win a playoff series, you make yourself really attractable to good free agents, guys, disgruntled stars that might want to look for a trade. You make yourself look like a really attractable destination. And I think we're now at a point where we're not really looking at the draft anymore. We're not really looking like toward that lottery. We're looking more towards like win now moves, moves that can thread the needle and completely and make us, put us in that upper tier of like those Eastern Conference teams, because the Eastern Conference is like a big three-headed monster. You have the Bucks, the Celtics, and the 76ers. We all know those are the favorites to come out of the East, right? But if the Knicks can, like I said before, if the Knicks can make it to the second round, and if they can, even if they get knocked out there, I still am optimistic going forward about what that can mean for the team, because hopefully we bring back Josh Hart, which I honestly expect to do. Because honestly, in the 6 game sample size we've seen of Hart, I know it's just 6 games, but I already think that we've seen more than anybody could have predicted right off the bat. His fit is seamless, and he's a Tibbs type of guy. So I definitely think he's a core piece moving forward. He makes the team so much deeper because the difference in the bench has been, astronomical. Because before Hart came along, we were one of the worst bench teams in the league. Now people are talking about that we're one of the best benches in the league. The narrative has flipped completely. So I definitely think we have a lot going in our favor, and I'm hoping that can continue. If they can win tonight against Brooklyn, that'd be a nice step because then we'd create more separation from Brooklyn in the standings because we're already a game up on them. But if we can beat them tonight, we'd go up 2 games. We're already a couple games up on Miami in the 7th spot, so then 5th seed would look really comfortable for us going down the final stretch.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as you mentioned, with kind of the change in the shift in how you're going to look at this Knicks team, we're not sitting here. This podcast is not going to be a podcast, where in April we're talking about, all right, guys, let's look at the draft lottery. Where do you think the Knicks can fall? What type of guys are going to get, in the 5 to 10 range or whatever it may be. No, that conversation's gone, right? Even we have our own. I think we still have our own pick, if I'm not mistaken. And if not, that Dallas pick, man, the
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Mavericks are like a game above 500. We might end up with like the 17th, 18th pick, and not because of us, but because of the team we traded with, right? Their pick might end up being better than ours. So, the way I look at it is, as you mentioned, it's no longer a conversation about how can this team, acquire young talent and rebuild. It's about how can this team now get that final piece to push them over the edge. And as you mentioned, join that three-headed monster. That's going to slowly, I think, become a four-headed monster as Cleveland kind of gets a little bit better. I think they're a really good team. So, but I agree that there's kind of that like mini gap between like the 76ers and Cleveland, right? Where the 76ers, I think, having a Joel Embiid, having a Jason Tatum, having a Giannis, that's different than having, Donovan Mitchell, who isn't bad or anything. There isn't like not that good, but he isn't gonna win the MVP, if you get what I'm saying. I feel like one of those three guys for
Mm-hmm.
those three teams are going to win an MVP or are going to at least finish top 3 MVP voting multiple times in their career. The Knicks are pushing that envelope. I think they're reaching the ceiling of a team that doesn't have that type of MVP caliber player or that like dark horse MVP caliber player. I don't know if Julius Randle or Brunson are pushing into that tier. Maybe they are. But the way I look at it right now is, as you mentioned with Josh Hart, this team is just deep, right? This team is just they just have so many quality NBA players. They don't really trot out lineups that aren't good or like where you feel like you're at a mismatch. You feel like you can match anyone's bench. You like the starting lineup. You have Brunson and Randall who just need to keep pace with the stars in the other team, and then you have your bench kind of take the lead there. That's kind of how the Knicks are going to be able to beat some of these teams in the postseason if they are able to get a matchup that can favor them. End of the day, they're gonna have to face some teams that are really tough in the postseason in the first round, right? You're not gonna be able to walk into the postseason and face, like the Wizards, right? You're walking into the postseason. Your easiest matchup, quote unquote, is the Cavs, right? And the Cavs are still really damn good. Grimes has defended Mitchell well all year, and I think that the Knicks have some good personnel to handle the Cavs, but the Cavs are no joke. They have enough big men to kind of stop Julius Randle if he's driving to the paint and make it really tough to get boards. And they have the guard play to certainly put up a bunch of points. So the way I look at it is this team is serious. Like this team, as you mentioned, the ceiling is you can't really count them out of anything, right? This team has kind of just exceeded expectations left and right. But the way I look at it is, realistically, if this team gets to the postseason and they lose to the Cavaliers, it's not a disappointing end to the season. It's just like you think about maybe you could have won, whatever it may be, right? A disappointing end to the season would be, seventh seed, play in, losing the play in, right? That would be a disappointment to me. I'd be pretty disappointed with that. Not just based on coming into season expectations, but I think it's fair to readjust your expectations based on how they've played recently. You know, as you mentioned with Mitchell Robinson's continued, like, he's come back and it's like night and day. It feels like this team is so different on the interior. I know Josh Hart adds a rebounding presence as well as a good rebounding guard. I feel like Quickly has improved his rebounding over his 3-year tenure with the Knicks. But man, this team, they do all the little things well. There's really no massive flaw with this team. But as we kind of project forward, as we kind of look towards the rest of this week and upcoming matchups, right? This matchup with the Nets is crucial. Whoever wins this matchup is going to be the 5th seed after tonight. And that could change throughout the season, of course, but the Knicks have an opportunity not to bury the Nets per se, but to put them in a spot where the Nets the Knicks will control their own destiny. If the Knicks win tonight, they push the Nets 2 games back, right? They're 2 games ahead of the loss column of Miami, right? They could be a game ahead in the loss column of Brooklyn, who also has to play, is also back 2 wins in the loss column, would be 3 if the Knicks won tonight. They could really put themselves in a situation to be in a great spot after tonight if they were to win tonight. What do you think is the key to tonight's game? Who do you think has to step up? Who do you think is that guy tonight for the Knicks if they were to come away with a win?
Right. So I think Jalen Brunson's going to be the one to have to step up a little bit. He's been fine. He's still been moving the ball well. I know he's been off to a slow start out of the break, but I can see slowly he's starting to figure it out a little bit. And I think, honestly, he's in line for a big night tonight against Brooklyn. I do think so. I already know Brooklyn's plan is going to be attack Jalen Brunson because Brunson navigates through defenses so well. So their game plan is going to center around him. So I'm hoping we can see a big night out of Brunson, but I think the big key really is if Randall has a big game and also defense, because I know Brooklyn doesn't have KD and Kyrie anymore, but you can't just ignore guys like Mikal Bridges, for example. Mikal Bridges just dropped 31 last night against Milwaukee. Really good team, obviously, one of the best teams in the NBA. He just dropped 31 against them. He had a 45-point game against Miami a few weeks ago. And he's someone who he can light it up and get red hot at any given moment. So I definitely think making sure you can contain him and keep try to limit his abilities as best you can on the offensive side is huge. Defensively he's going to be a pest. We already know that, but I think if Brunson can have a big game, that would be really beneficial to a win tonight. You don't want to you don't want to let Bridges get hot, like I said. You don't want to let those things happen. If you can stop guys like that, because last time we played Brooklyn, Bridges had only 7 points. And we ended up winning by 20. So, if you can stop him I think he's a big key right there. If you can stop him from really heating up, then that can really give you a big advantage. We're also at a rest advantage here. Brooklyn is on a back-to-back. We had the day off yesterday, so we have an advantage there in that regard. But like I said, as long as we can get good nights out of Brunson, your usual good night out of Randall, I think we can be in line for a win. And obviously with our bench is way deeper than Brooklyn's right now, so I definitely think we can get something going. Brooklyn won't have Ben Simmons, even though he's kind of been a non-factor. It's still Ben Simmons. He's still a good defender. Brooklyn's also missing a couple other pieces. I think they're missing Yuta Watanabe, who's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. So those are key pieces right there that they're missing. We need to take advantage of that and make sure we limit the guys that are playing, such as Bridges, Dinwiddie, Cam Johnson, because Cam Johnson's lit us up in the past. You don't want him to get hot either because he's a lights out shooter. Things like that. If you can thwart those guys and match it up with a big night from our guys on the offensive side, then that'll be the key tonight to winning this game.
Yeah, I agree, and that's going to come down to Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart when you mention Mikal Bridges. I feel like those two guys really made life difficult for Bridges. They made life difficult for Tatum on Monday. They can make life difficult for anyone, and I feel like another point you mentioned too that's going to be huge here is you got to let Cameron Johnson can shoot the gym out. Right, he can absolutely gash you from 3. I know. Watanabe is questionable right now, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if how what his percentage of playing tonight is, though I don't know. I mean, it's obviously not 100%. But if he is somehow able to play, you're
With
gonna have
Ben
to control
Simmons
that
out,
perimeter. And even if
I
he
would
doesn't play,
expect him to get some time on the court if he were available. So, you know, regardless, if Watanabe were to be playing, he's a lights out shooter. So if you were, if you saw him on the court, you got to make sure you don't let him get hot, because I know he's not a high volume scorer, but he is a shooter. And some of our problems all year
any
had
given
been
night.
perimeter defense. So we can, right now, we exactly. And we've been, our perimeter defense has tightened up great lately. We can't take a step back. We got to keep our foot on the gas with that regard, and not let shooters get hot. We did a great job against Boston. Boston shot like horrible from three. Like, I don't have the exact percentage, but they shot like below 20%. They just had an awful shooting night. We guarded the three really well. We were switching really well. We were giving Tatum fits all night. So much we got in his head and got him ejected from the game. So, you know, if we can just limit shooters like that again, like we've been doing, we're in line for a good one. We're definitely in line for a good one.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see how this team takes on the challenge of, you're playing three straight quality playoff teams, right? If you can, how do they respond from how do they continue this hot streak? They're no longer. I feel like we're moving past the point where they're just like, oh, it's the Knicks, they're sneaky good. It's like, the Nets are not going to view the Knicks as, oh, they're sneaky good, they're pests. They're like, yo, this team's good, and they've got a target on their back. This team's red hot. Other teams in the East, the Nets in Miami, they're on the outside looking in on that fifth seed, and they want that fifth seed. They want it bad. They want that fifth seed just as badly as the Knicks do. But can the Knicks show that, hey, you know what, we have the more talented roster, we are the better team, and we're going to play like that? This is kind of the first time in a while where the Knicks are going to walk into matchups with good postseason teams, established franchise like Miami. You typically don't see a New York Miami matchup where New York is supposed to be the favorite, right? It's a New York Brooklyn matchup. This is going to be a good game, and quite frankly, the Knicks have to start living up to that role that they're going to have, where you can't just walk in there and expect to beat the crap out of the Knicks anymore. You can't walk into Madison Square Garden and you're an opposing player and you're like, all right, time for me to have a 40 bomb and have an iconic game at Madison Square Garden. Those days feel like, if you want those days to be behind you, it's time to embrace that role. And this team is definitely capable of doing it. So tonight, my guy to watch for tonight, I'm going to go with Quentin Grimes, right? As he mentioned, the importance of protecting the perimeter. I think he's going to be really important for that. And then another thing too is, not that the Nets don't have, the Nets are like bad or anything, but I feel like defensively their guard play, when you have a guy like Dinwiddie on the court, your guard play defensively isn't going to be very good in that regard. So maybe he can take advantage of that. Michael Bridges is an incredible defender, but if you feel like he's probably going to be on a Brunson or a Randall, I imagine. I don't think they're going to put him on Grimes necessarily. So if Grimes gets open looks, if he can hit his threes, if he can play clutch defense, the Knicks are going to walk out of this with a win. So I know that Grimes, I'm not putting all the pressure in the world on Grimes, but I think that if he can play his role tonight of being, the 3-and-D guy with some playmaking and getting a couple looks at the rim, he can, and he does it well, the Knicks are going to win tonight.
So yeah, so Quentin Grimes, he can definitely be an impactful player tonight. Like you said, the guard play defensively for Brooklyn is not the best. And I definitely would expect Mikal Bridges to be on Jalen Brunson. So Dinwiddie will likely be on Grimes. And, Grimes has not been, obviously since Hart came along, Grimes has slowed down a little bit. His shot hasn't been falling as efficiently, but, he slowly picked it up the other night. He had a couple threes the other night. So we can hope that, he's in line for a much bigger game offensively with Dinwiddie on him. Thing I like about Grimes is that he's, even when he's not shooting the ball well, he still knows where to be on the floor. He still knows where to make the passes. He knows when to make the right pass. He knows when to do the smart things, the little things on the floor. And of course, his defensive impact is amazing. That's a big reason why he still starts and gets a lot of minutes, is because of the defense. But overall offensively, I still like his contributions to the ball movement and things like that. So Quentin Grimes is definitely someone to watch tonight for sure. Hopefully, he can have a big night with Dinwiddie on him. And like I said, a big night from Brunson and or Randall will be the main catalyst, but Quentin Grimes is definitely someone to keep a close eye on, with given who he'll be matched up with. So, and I'm hoping that he can have a big night, because I do want to see Quentin Grimes get a bigger night and have a much more impactful offensive night. We all know he's been great defensively all season long, but I think sometimes we still wonder just what's Grimes' like ceiling offensively. I think we're still trying to figure that out. So, and I don't think we'll have the answer tonight, but regardless, I do think a big game from Grimes, or a much more high scoring game from him, or at least more than like 5 points, will definitely kind of show like it'll emphasize the depth of this team. I think that's a big thing. It'll emphasize the depth because with Josh Hart's been scoring in double figures off the bench nonstop. Manuel quickly's been great off the bench all year long. So I think like I said, a big game from Grimes can emphasize the depth big time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And, end of the day, I'm really, really, really excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be good. Then again, it's a good test. I know the Celtics team was, Celtics are a better team than the Nets. But, you just, it's good to see your team play multiple playoff teams in a row and kind of see how they fare. As you mentioned, this is going to be a little bit of a playoff preview. You mentioned this in the last podcast we did. We're like, this is going to be the Knicks kind of like, pushing it in terms of, this is their playoff preview. This is kind of what they're going to look like in the postseason, in terms of lineups and rosters and all that stuff. They're so far game 1 of 3 of this playoff preview, if we like to call it that. They've passed that test. So tonight is the second test. Can they get through that one? And if you beat the Nets tonight, I think a win against Miami, while it obviously helps your standings, I consider it a cherry on top, right? The fact that you took the first 2 games, or if you take 2 out of 3 this week, it's a win. I've been saying it all week. If you somehow sweep, it's impossible for me to be even remotely displeased in the slightest, right? There's no complaints to be had. It's perfect, right? But I think you make a lot of really good points about just how this matchup's going to look like against the Nets. Guys, I hope you guys are just excited as we are, because this is a big series. This is a big game for the Knicks. This is a big month for the Knicks, really. It's going to determine a lot when it comes to their playoff seeding.
Big
So,
series.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. We got a
So,
big
I don't know if you
stuff
have any
going
final
on.
thoughts.
Right now they have this stretch with Brooklyn, Miami, and then they will play Boston again after Miami. So we're hoping right there that we can see just how this team would perform in the playoffs. I think it'll be a big test. I think this will be like this will show people like, okay, now the Knicks are playing playoff teams. Here's how they would match up against those playoff teams. Let's see how they would do. And they've already passed the one test, like you said. They passed the first test with playing Boston, pretty much dominating Boston, really, because Boston never really came that close. They had a couple good runs, but they never really threatened the lead late. So I do think that was a great test right there, and I think as this week goes on, we'll see a lot more, and I'm hoping we can see a lot of good things more than bad things.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And end of the day, this team is playing really well. This team's continued to impress. It feels like every time we come on this podcast, we have an opportunity to talk about something good that's happened with the Knicks. Maybe we just are the good luck charm. Maybe we're the reason why the Knicks are playing well. End of the day, throw away all the stats. Let's just chalk it up to superstition. But in all seriousness, though, I'm really excited for tonight's game. I hope you guys are just excited. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. If you guys like what we do, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. We've got plenty of Knicks content for you guys. Make sure to check out the Fireside Knicks Twitter. Make sure to check out all our socials. I'm Ryan Garcia. That's Dylan Becker. We'll see you guys on the next episode of Fireside Knicks.